So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants and distinguished guests, it's with honor and enthusiasm that we introduce Dr. Mohamed Evren Tok, a visionary educator, pioneering entrepreneur, trailblazer in the realm of sustainability. Dr. Tok stands at the forefront of innovation and transformative education, bringing his unparalleled expertise to the stage as a keynote speaker for the Changemaker 20 Summit today. We have the privilege to have with us Dr. Evren Tok, and he will be speaking about the transformative approach which we need to acquire the 2030 agenda. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Dr. Mohamed Evren Tok. It's a pleasure, sir, to have you on board. Thanks.
I am acting as the Associate Dean for Community Engagement at the College of Public Policy, Hamad Bin Khalifa University. And at the same time, myself and my team, we have been leading a research grant on education for sustainable development in Qatar. And some of the work we do is about how to localize sustainable development goals. I think many of you would know that there are 17 goals. I'm pretty sure that they have been acknowledged multiple times during this conference. And of course, these are global goals. But on the other hand, these global goals, they are not just, like outside, and they're just kind of external to us, right? They are quite internal as well, in the sense that they are part of us. They are part of our daily lives. If we are talking about gender equality or reducing inequalities or reducing poverty, right? Or climate action or climate change or life below water, life on land, some of these SDGs. These are things that we experience every day. So there are two questions then. The first question is, if we are experiencing these every day, how do we make sure that these global manifestations, right, they kind of have a meaning in our lives and we can think in a more localized way? So, for instance, let's say circular economy in Cambodia or in Argentina or in US might be different from circular economy in Turkey or in, let's say, in UK, right? So therefore, what are those commonalities between different countries and what are those more contextual differences? So this is very important. So this is one part of what we are looking at in our research project. And the second thing we look into is, okay, these are like all these 17 SDG goals, Sustainable Development Goals. They are global and they are local at the same time. But if we want to use them for educational purposes, which is, by the way, quite common in the world right now, if you look at institutions like Sustainable Solutions Development Network, which is one of the biggest, SDSN in short, abbreviated version, led by Dr. Jeffrey Sachs as part of the Center for Sustainability, you may know, in Columbia University. It's such a brilliant initiative, and Jeffrey Sachs is a big name, as you know. Or some other initiatives, Global Schools Program, for instance, they are all working towards, or many of the work done by UNESCO. Like you can see that they are trying to find ways to integrate sustainable development goals in our educational systems. But the question is how. So this is one of the areas that we are working on, and we are trying to work with the ministries. We are trying to work with the other institutions like global entities, regional organizations, so on and so forth, to find ways to localize and make these global goals meaningful for people on the ground. Not just, I know 17 goals, I know their indicators, but it's not about that. So it's about thinking of SDGs as a lived experience. So we are living in SDGs. If you go to, in certain countries, always one of the countries that really mesmerizes me is Switzerland. Like when I go to Geneva, I always see in the bus stops the goals that are related to the transportation system and how they are supporting SDGs. So it is about the role of state authorities. It's about governance. It is about indicators of how local we are, right? How do we report our progress when it comes to SDGs, and how do we implement them, right? And again, if you ask me how like UN understands localization is, they understand it as defining, implementing, and monitoring strategies at the local level for achieving global, national, and subnational sustainable development goals and targets. So, of course, this is a very critical element, because if you don't really do that, then you might end up with, some of you may not know, you are too young, but what preceded SDGs was the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs. And the problem with the MDGs was that they were too broad, they were too high level, and they didn't have a chance to get the ownership and the support of the broader constituencies, broader publics, the youth, civil society, and so on and so forth. Let me tell you, so this is the kind of the broad intro, and I wish I was able to show you a few of my charts, but I wanted to show you a little bit about our research and some of the analysis. So what we did was, in the literature, especially in the academic literature, we wanted to understand how SDGs and localization are understood. Why this is important? Because it's critical to know when we say local, what do we mean by local, and who really kind of is being pointed out when local is word. So we looked into around more than 150 articles, and we try to kind of select keywords on localization and local or localized. So you can see here is that for the SDGs, we use the keywords already defined by University of Auckland and also Monash University. Australia has done really great work. And you can see the number of words and word combinations that includes localization here. And definitely SDG number 3 is one of the highest, along with SDG number 6. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a good example of how SDGs have been distributed over time with the word local. So what you see here is there are the number of publications that are including local. So when academics, when policy analysts write and research about SDGs, okay, the likelihood of using local in that analysis is increasing, which means that we are becoming more and more cognizant of the importance of local, right, in our understanding of SDGs. So this is what this chart shows. And the next one, please. And then this is like a cloud version of results. And you can see that there are some important takeaways. As you know, the size of the word represents the intensity and the frequency of the word. So when you see, when we look into the results, you can see sustainable development and goals are the biggest. But then the second one is, you can see urban, right? It's relatively bigger than others. And one of the reasons, and localization, see on the lower left, localization and urban, so relatively higher, so relatively bigger in terms of size. And one of the reasons why it's bigger is because they are acknowledged more. So what does it mean? It has a very good meaning. It has a very intuitive meaning, actually, which is that cities and urban centers are becoming the real venues of SDG localization. So when we think of SDGs, we are not really thinking of them as countries. This is according to the literature analysis that we do. So what we see is that when we think of SDGs, we are more likely thinking of them in our cities. Cities are SDGs have more resonance, and this is something quite different than before. Okay, and the next one, please. This will illustrate. The next one will illustrate this even further. Next one, please. I'll just you can go to the next one. Next one, please. Yeah. Yes, this is another way of understanding it. So these are, again, SDG keywords, and you can see the frequencies. And the top word means governance, how we govern. So it is not about governments. Government is, the part of the state which governs us, right? It is top down. But governance is about including different actors in decision-making processes. So when we write about SDGs, localization, don't forget, the key word here was localization. So, which means that we are becoming more open and receptive to understanding and bringing in different actors than the states. That is what the governance means. So when researchers write about localization and SDGs, then they are most likely look into governance systems, municipalities, civil society actors, neighborhood associations, like maybe civil societies and faith-based organizations, maybe some private sector, and so on and so forth. So it's not about governing, but it's about governance, so which means multiplication of different actors. So next one, please. And all these analysis we do on MaxQDA, which is a very cool software to do content analysis. So this is another version, which is, so based on this, so SDGs and SDGs between the global and the local, right? So what do we see? We see that governance is a key term. Cities are becoming more and more important. Then what is the SDG that gets the highest traction out of this? SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. So it's very interesting, right? When we talk about SDGs now, and when we talk about localizing SDGs, what we see is that SDG number 11 is the highest used SDG when it comes to localization in the literature, and it's not a surprise. And the second one following is SDG number 16, right? Institutions and justice. So can we go to the next one, please? This is just a validation of the previous one. This is a heat map. So you can see that over time, which SDGs are analyzed more by scholars when it comes to localization. This is what you see here is SDG number 11. What you see is that like in 2021, 1,931 times it appeared in our research, which is really high compared to other SDGs. So I don't want to bore you with more and more details, but our analysis is showing that when scholars, when academics and analysts look into SDGs, and when they look into the scales of SDGs, how we think, how we act, how we envision them, right? Now we are more likely thinking of them at the level of the cities and urban centers, right? Not just the states, not just the countries. And this is what this research has been showing right now. And this has important implications because cities are vibrant centers, vibrant spaces of action, interaction, and engagement, right? Overall in the world. It's a space where people can showcase their reaction, where people can mobilize, where people can build, make, and innovate, right? I'm pretty sure that you have seen many presentations that look into how cities are empowering. So, and it's also lived experience. When you say you are living in a country, okay, that's the country, but it's still a high level, right? But when you talk about your life, it's about your city, it's about your neighborhood, it's about your district. So this is exactly what SDGs are about. It's about your locality. It's about your identity that shapes how you think, how you behave, and how you act, how you build your opinions, and how you build your stance in the world. So this conference, Changemaker 20, I believe, this is an important conclusion. I feel that it's important for change makers to look around. So SDGs are now understood at the city level, at the urban levels, at the levels that are closer to us, which means that this is quite empowering. So it's a time for us not to really think of the big problems, but look at the problems around us because what the problems around me are not that different from the problems around you and him or her. So that's the kind of the idea of change making, I believe, that first we look around, what is in our proximity, what is feasible to change, right? So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and I wish you a pleasant rest of the conference.
Thanks so much, Dr. Irwin. It was very inspiring to hear you, and I know, and I believe it that it would really help our audience to reimagine the scheme of sustainability, and they would definitely think about the critical issues which you tried to highlight with your in your speech. And I definitely agree with you that change making really happens with youth, and this is the time that youth should collectively work for this. So there is one question from our audience. So one question has come from our audience. So they want to know that how can youth help to mobilize and for the localization of SDGs. So they would want to know that what are some of the different roles that youth can take up to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals or 2030 agenda. And I have received also one message wherein a person from Indonesia has mentioned that 2030 agenda would not meet the developmental needs, or it doesn't or it cannot be the last limitation for the development or the work which needs to be done in the global south. So how do we how do we imagine the developmental process even after 2030? They would want to know some inputs on that how should you prepare for that beyond the 2030 agenda.
Yeah, that's the biggest question right now. It's a $1 million question for sure. Let me first start with the initial question, the former one, about what the youth can do. I mean, there are so many things to do. I mean, usually for my students here and for various engagements that we do with high schools and K to 12 and even universities and graduate levels, one of the things that I always recommend to my colleagues, my students, and people who are interested is just to volunteer. Start somewhere else, start with a volunteering experience. Identify what really catches your attention, what is really creates a fire inside of yourself, what really matters to you, what bothers you in life, what you want to do, what kind of a change that you want to make. Of course, there are some global names, for instance, when it comes to climate change, and when it comes to let's say poverty, like Greta Thunberg and others, there's a lot of good, interesting, inspiring youth members in the world that will create change. Don't try to repeat them, just come up with your own. That is why local is important. So try to first identify, you don't have to do something right away. The most important thing is to identify what matters to you and what matters to your community. And then after that, it is about identifying your assets, your capacities, what is in your power and how can you mobilize. If it is about financial resources that you need, then how can you obtain them? If it is about, let's say, human power, then how do you really find people? Volunteering is key. And now in the times of social media and everything, you can easily access like-minded people. But the first starting point is not money. Often people think that they don't have any financial resources, so they cannot start anything. It's not true. What is really important is the idea that you need, the right idea, the idea that can take you from point A to point B. And then after that, people who can be with you, who can walk down the road with you to make it work, right? Is it a kind of coincidence that all these big ideas are coming out of garages, that the youth are in the garage and they come up with these great ideas? It's not coincidence. There's a kind of a logic, because they incubate, they kind of brainstorm, they keep thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, right? And they identify. So volunteering, not any volunteering, but of course volunteering with a purpose, right? So think of UN entities, think of local charities, think of civil society organizations, youth clubs. If you are in the school, why don't you build a club Or why don't you build an initiative that can make it change? Sometimes over the weekends we go for beach cleanings here, and students love it because they identify, they think of things that they have never thought before. So regarding 23rd agenda, it's a big question. It requires another couple of hours to discuss. But we are only 7 years, even 6.5 years away from the 23rd agenda. So do we really believe that we are going to accomplish it? Is it just a matter of numbers, or is it just a matter of direction? And also, how do you include and factor in so many shocks to the global conjunctures? Like, for instance, how do you really embrace the impact of COVID-19 on the performance of SDGs? It was a big game changer, right? Like we moved back how many years? So it's not a matter of numbers. It's not a matter of tight deadlines. It's a matter of the journey itself. And it's a matter of making people more cognizant and aware and mindful about the future. So I believe. Thank you. Great questions.
Yeah, definitely. I guess there are. Yeah, I think you quite would answer this question. So yeah. So there is one more question which says that how can promoting local entrepreneurship and innovation contribute to the localization of SDGs? I think if you could maybe try to address this question, which I guess Tanu Agrawal has asked this question from India.
Entrepreneurship is really important. But again, entrepreneurship, I have a very keen interest on education for entrepreneurs. And I've led a research grant on it before and here. And often people think that there's a magical recipe to become an entrepreneur, right? Like, okay, if I have these skills and competencies, I can just do anything, right? And I can build my company, and then I make some money, then I sell it to someone, and then but no, it's not the case. So first of all, there's no magical recipe, and that recipe, by the way, also depends on your locality, your neighborhood, your community, right? So which means that if you have the best idea, but if it is not applicable in your area, in your community, if you don't have the market for it, then it won't work. So I would recommend people to think of social entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship that really supports the community, the society, and at the same time makes money to kind of survive. This is important because what creates sustainability for entrepreneurs is not money. It's about the community. It's about the people around you. So it's about your social impact and how you capitalize on your social impact. That is something that you need in order to be sustainable. And change makers need to think like an entrepreneur, right? It's about sustainability of the change. It's not about making change one day and then everything is reversed the other day. No, you want the change to be gradual, to be sustainable, to be kind of healthy, right? So again, entrepreneurship is a big issue, but I would recommend looking at some good practices of entrepreneurship, but create your own experience, create your own narrative, right? Not just by others. One idea which worked for someone else may not work for you. So what is important to you?
Thanks for addressing these questions and giving us great insights. And I'm sure these insights will definitely help the aspiring people, change makers out there who want to bring in a legitimate change and who talk about the larger good of the globe. Thanks so much, Dr. Evren Tok. It was really inspiring to have you at this summit. And people like you have been always like a
Thank you. Thanks for inviting. Yeah.
Soon for these summits, and it's you who ignite and guide us. Where do we reach?
Yeah.
Thanks, amazing.
Yeah.
It was again having you on the board, and I must tell my audience that Dr. Evren Tok is a big name in sustainability and keeps on inspiring the youth. I'm sure and expect that he will continue that.
You're so kind. Thank you so much, Jay. And congratulations for putting this wonderful event together. You are the masterminds. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks so much, Dr. Tok. Thank you so much. Thank you.